we know what we need to do. Let's get on it. The only way to do this is to get both sides to kind of give a little bit. And so what he did was he got the Arab side, not just the Palestinians, but all, what, I guess 22, 24 members of the Arab League. In other words, every Arab country in the world, not just Egypt and Jordan, but every Arab country in the world to offer Israel a unilateral peace deal in exchange for accepting these things. So in other words, in one swoop, Israel would be at peace with all of its neighbors. On the Israeli side, all they had to do in order to achieve this was to cease settlement activity. We've talked about this before. Every single day since the first day of Israel's existence in 1948, they have been gobbling up more and more land. Of course, they're growing. More and more Jews from all over the world are moving to Israel and making it their home. They don't have houses. They need houses. They need land. Where's the land? Well, Israel is more or less out of land. So what has it been doing? It's been taking Palestinian land. That's what we mean by the occupation. These settlements have gobbled up massive, massive amounts of, well, what was supposed to be the future Palestine. And in fact, that's their deliberate purpose. There's a phrase amongst certain Israeli politicians called facts on the ground. What they mean by that is, yeah, we're fine with the two-state solution. Not all Israeli politicians think that this is a pretty standard view in the Israeli political circles. We accept this situation, but the longer it takes to get this, the more of this land will be ours. So let's just sort of drag our feet. Let's take our time. What's the rush? There's no rush. You know, every day we're getting a little bit more. Every day it's going to be harder to remove us from this land. President Obama, of course, made a number of speeches, one in Cairo. He made some huge promises here in the United States too, in which he said that he demands that Israel cease all settlement activity, all of it, now, without question. Even what Israel euphemistically refers to as natural growth. What they mean by that is that, look, we already have this settlement, we already have 100,000 people living in this settlement, but they're having children. So that settlement, we won't make any new settlements, but we have to expand this settlement. And Obama said, unlike any other president before him, no, absolutely not. I want an immediate, unconditional freeze of all settlement activity in order for us to come together and talk. So from the Arabs, he got this promise. He demanded this promise for peace in exchange for the two-state solution. And from the Israelis, he demanded this settlement. But something unusual happened. Something that people thought would happen, but no one actually, really was prepared for it. And that is that Israel basically told the president to go screw himself. I mean, really, that's sort of the diplomatic, way of putting it. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, quite a radical himself, basically said, no. Now, the reason this is so shocking is that for decades, as you know, the United States has been the primary protector of Israel. We joke that Israel is the 51st state. We give Israel $3 billion a year. That's your money, the taxes that you pay to your federal government for your jobs. $3 billion of that every year goes to Israel. And of course, you're talking about, again, a first world country, not a third world country. So it was assumed that when the president of a nation that gives $3 billion to another nation makes a request of that nation, the nation would say, well, yes, of course, whatever it is that you want. I mean, obviously. And yet, that reversal, that sort of experience in which Israel basically said, no, no, we're not even going to slow them down. In fact, just this week, residents, about 2 or 3 thousand Palestinian residents living in East Jerusalem, which is not yet the capital of Palestine because there's no Palestine, about 3,000 residents living in a really poor area of well, all of Palestine is poor, but a particularly poor area of East Jerusalem were given eviction notices by Israel. They were told that their homes are going to be destroyed, and in their place, they were going to create a park. Now, guess who that park is for? It's not for Palestinians. It's not like we're going to build you a nice park. It's for Israel, which means that they are now expanding more and more into East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem, which according to this agreement is supposed to be the future capital of the Palestinian state. So far from even obeying Obama's demand to stop, they've accelerated their settlement activity. And of course, as you can imagine, the response from President Obama was fierce. He called the Israeli prime minister and he said, if you don't do what I ask of you, we're going to withdraw this $3 billion right now. No, just kidding. Of course nothing like that happened. Don't be crazy. Of course not. What did Obama do? Nothing. Nothing. He put his tail between his legs and he walked away. And he hasn't mentioned, not even the word Palestine has not left his lips since the day Netanyahu told him to go screw himself. That is the situation that we're living in. That's where we are today in this peace process. What's really fascinating about this problem is that in poll after poll after poll taken of Israelis and Palestinians, massive majorities have accepted this two-state solution. The last time this poll was taken, 79% of Palestinians and 89% of Israelis said they accepted this outcome. That's phenomenal. 79% of Palestinians, 89% of Israelis. That's amazing. And yet, we are again not 1 inch closer to actually having this be a reality than we were 20 years ago, than we were 30 years ago. Not 1 inch. In fact, the argument